now that we've defined what we perceive as the worst, what are the best things, or what's the best thing? If you had to pick one, what's the best thing about Uprising that we've been gifted? And I will let Andrew start.
That's a tough one, and I know I'm going to take flack for this one, but I do think the introduction of Icelander as a concept was the best thing.
So, I don't know if I told you guys this, but I have cameras in LSS Studios. So, a couple weeks back, they were planning the World Championship event. And they're like, what should we do for formats? And this is the question I posed to our audience this week. Somebody brought Punch. They're like, oh, let's just have some punch and pie while we come up with the formats and what events we're going to do for this great thing. But somebody spiked it because they all got drunk as fuck and put Blitz into the World's event. So my question for the audience is, who spiked the punch? I have the video proof. Who spiked the punch at LSS that got everybody so shit-faced that they put Blitz in the World Championship? That's the Outcast question of the week right there. I just named the segment. Did you guys hear that? Just named the segment right there.
I like it.
I know who it was.
It was a pretty big, lot of negative feedback from it. We'll be curious to hear what people think. So, do you like it? And who at LSS spiked the punch to come up with the decision to have Blitz in the World Champion?
Grab your pitchforks, everybody. We're going hunting. It's Wabbit season. Like, no, just what do you think about it? Tell us your thoughts. Do you like Blitz?
It reminds me. So, Andrew, we have a group chat. Same like with you, where we're all in a chat on Messenger. So the three of us have a group chat, and we get into these just weird discussions about nothingness. And today was like actors. So we were talking about like Sandman and the actor, because I'm not a fan. And then it came into Robert Pattinson as Batman. Not sure if you saw that. Super goth. Not a fan of that. So me and Dane, I found opposite opinions on that kind of stuff. Very, very opposite. And Blake just kind of goes between the two of us. But the interesting one is, I haven't seen the movie, is gore. So Dane is not a fan of how they brought gore into Thor. And now the question too, if you've seen Thor: Love and was it good? Is Dane, I haven't seen it yet. So Dane's kind of got me trending down, which is good, because if I'm trending down, that means I'll probably be more likely like the movie.
100%. Can I give my elevator speech on it? Just quick?
Yeah.
Just a quick pitch on it? All right.
100%.
So I think that looking at it from a literary perspective, I'm a big Marvel Comics guy. I fucking love and
a literary perspective.
Right.
Literary
and it'll make sense. It'll make sense because
I do. So I'm going to be fair. I do remember in some of my college, English courses and literature courses and writing, we studied the run of comics that Gore the God Butcher is in. My professor, he was like, from a literary perspective, how do we view Gore the God Butcher and his interactions with Thor? It's true. From a literary perspective.
Fuck you, Blake. Listen, though. Okay, this is my elevator pitch. Because, so that Thor run, I think arguably was the best development of a villain that Marvel Comics has seen, I would argue ever, but at least in recent history, like in the last 20 years. Because looking at him, it's the first time that we got like a full, like in that comic run, you got a full run of what drove this guy to do what he did, losing his family, finding the gods didn't care, going after them, growing in power, losing himself in that, and then finding an ability to bring his family back, and then in turn losing his family after they reveal that they began to worship him out of fear, and like having that dichotomy take place. And you like, at first you're feeling for him because you're like, oh yeah, you're kind of on his side, like, yeah, fuck these gods, Core, like they are piles of shit. And then you go from that to seeing him slowly descend, like in his own insanity and being caught up in what he's doing butchering all these gods, and you follow that, and you get to see all of that descent as he, like forsakes his wife and kills his, like all of this stuff happens in the comics, that as he descends into his own, like he's basically becoming the thing that, or he became the thing that he was set out to destroy because they weren't worthy of worship. And you get to experience all this, and that, my argument is like that is what made Gore this amazing villain. Not, oh, the gods, like the reason that I didn't like Gore in this movie is because I feel like they stripped that out and just replaced it with like villain motive number 17 in the list of villain motives, and then like ran with the movie. It's like, I feel like they just didn't understand what it was that people who loved that comic and thought that Gore was this amazing villain, what it was that made him that amazing villain. Honestly, the movie was good. I really enjoyed the movie. I think it's a great movie, and I think for people that haven't read the comics and don't have that connection, probably really enjoy the movie. But I didn't appreciate the fact that like this villain, and granted, I probably built it up in my own head, right? I built it up, but
you've been known to do that.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the first time that I was genuinely excited for an adaptation, because I was like, oh, this is cool. Like they're taking like this actually well-developed villain that I think is genuinely one of the best villains ever written in Marvel, and they're bringing him to the big screen. This is going to be great. I'm really curious to see how they like show this. And they were just like, no, we're going to have him kidnap kids. And like, I know that Blake hates that because
spoiler alert, man.
Spoiler alert. I haven't seen the damn movie yet.
He stabs the main character's mom, whatever you want the evil
She's already
villain motive
dead.
to be.
She
like,
died
I know,
in like
but
number 1 or 2.
I'll put a spoiler tag. No, I won't. But that's my.
Andrew,
that's,
have you seen it? Are you a big Marvel fan?
I need to make 2 points here. Number one, I think that I always argue that the MCU is basically another run of comics. And number two, Dane took us on the longest elevator ride ever. If that was an elevator pitch,
60 seconds.
that was like
elevator speech.
dude.
yeah,
my deliveries. I'm going to 37th floor, baby, and like there's stops along the way.
We
so.
went to the Sears Tower from floor 1 to the very tippy top, baby, and we still stopped at the top. And Dane was like, "Hold on, you got to let me finish, though."
No, yeah, I was 100% just gonna say, like, I was in the elevator giving my pitch, and like the door opened and dinged, and I put my arm out, and I was like, "Okay, hold on though, because Gore, listen, Gore."
Yeah.
No, so that was my gripe with it.
Stuff, because this is what happens. We got a podcast that's nothing about Fab. So next question. This is Andrew starting with this one. Dane, you're last. We might skip you until the next subject matter at this point, but right now Andrew's going second.
We're going
so
chess clock.
We just talked about Twitter before we started recording. Andrew's not on it, so he might not have seen this. So there's a bunch of teams. No idea how this happened. I just follow mainly because of Cody is on a team and they drafted people. So they drafted people for the Pro Tour.
Yeah, players
of who they thought. Funniest one is Dalen Mack drafted himself. Kind of funny.
This is like a fantasy draft type of deal.
So fantasy draft players.
Yeah, the premise is each of them drafted 4, and then when they win a round, they'll get a point. And then at the end of it all, whoever's team has the most points wins.
That's kind of cool.
The question, Andrew, and you get to start, is in your opinion, and this is an impossible question, but we're going to ask it, who and what wins Lille?
Who? I have no idea because I don't know who's going. I think Viserai wins. I think that one's an easy slam dunk.
Viserai. You got Viserai. Really? So is Viserai big in your local meta?
Kind of, yeah. Also, we just wrapped up the DC Summer Champs, and it was Viserai final. I won't spoil who won, but
so I think that the answer to this question is basically I would never pick Viserai because locally, like I honestly think a well-piloted Bravo wins pretty easily, to be honest. And that's
Bravo's a good bet. Bravo's a good bet.
I think with Kale going, my money is on Kale right now. I mean, anybody can choke as long as he gets properly drunk up the night before and doesn't get hardly any sleep. He's going to perform well with Bravo, but Viserai is not. So that's why this question's so interesting, because depending on your meta is going to sway your view of what's going to win.
Yeah.
And nothing is more. Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say a lot of it for Kale really depends on if you can use his version of performance enhancing drugs, which is a lot of alcohol and very little sleep the night before. So,
I mean, I am continually impressed by that guy because no one has repped. I don't think there's anyone on the planet who's repped a hero like that guy's repped a hero. I think that's a fair statement, right? Yeah. So, yeah. But you guys have to agree, right? It's one of the most wide open fab metas we've ever seen. I mean, it could go any way, right?
In trying to guess, because there's like we have people locally trying to get the Icelander puzzle figured out. And Icelander can really hurt Bravo because you can't get rid of Frost Hex. And so what if Icelander pops up? Then does Dromai suddenly become a deck? But not having zero big events and very little knowledge going into the Pro Tour is what makes it so interesting, because you're guessing based off a local meta. You have no data to pick a deck by. So you're basically like, dart board, what am I best with? Let's go to the dance.
Yeah, it's interesting because like Kale is on Twitter, and I see a lot of times people posting, I've locked my deck in, or other people will talk about how they can't believe other people have locked their deck in because they're still trying to figure out what hero to play, let alone what the right 80 cards is. And I think that I've seen him comment on more than one person's post that this becomes a meta where you play what you feel the most comfortable piloting and you have the most reps in, and then you just pray before the event starts and you go, "Dear Lord, baby Jesus, sweet little tiny 8-pound, 6-ounce Jesus, all omnipotent, but he's just born. Please don't let me play this deck. Just in Swiss, let me not play this deck. I don't care who's piloting it. I just don't want to play it." Because everybody has a matchup or two that if they play it too many times will lose them the tournament and they will scrub out of the Pro Tour, which is very cool. But also when you're picking a deck, I think that's why comfort level with the deck comes paramount. It's less about what you think is best and more, what do you think you can beat the most decks with?
So we don't have much Viserai running around locally. We just don't. I haven't seen, I don't think it's top 8 anything. I just don't see a lot of it getting piloted, period. In where you're at, Andrew, what is there a deck that you find Viserai struggles into right now?
Well, I mean, Guardian does pretty well against aggro, right? I mean, I think your call on Bravo's fair. I think that there's no way we don't see some amount of Fi. I guess that's more my baseline is like, I think we're going to see Guardian and I think we're going to see Fi. And the ratio at which we see those two will probably dictate what makes the rest. I think that's where my head is. Because Viserai can outrace Fi like a champ, right? No problem there. Struggles a little bit, but as probably a better matchup versus the Ice Lexi matchup. And then doesn't do well to get his cards getting stripped, but who does, right? So, and then, if Bravo's doing well, then you got Prism and game on, baby. So,
yeah, that's where does Prism fall in all of this? Is like, who has the nuts to bring Prism, knowing, I guess I shouldn't say this, but I would think you're going to get one of those 25-30% Fi fields. Is that fair, or is that too much, you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the issue is it depends so much on if people have any knowledge that they're going off of, because you do have, whenever you have big events like this, you have a lot of subsets of testing where the best players or good groups of players are off testing amongst themselves. They're not bothering with other events. They're not out at skirmishes, wasting their time playing in, a Blitz format that isn't relevant to their Pro Tour. And as a result, there's always the potential of something just popping up out of nowhere. We saw it with Kano at the first Pro Tour, where we were looking at it. Now, granted, picking a deck that counters something is much easier when you're picking it based on the meta being very solved. When we knew it was Starvo and the world was like, okay, it's Starvo and Prism players are trying to counter it. But then if you're a Kano player, you go, okay, well, in classic fashion, if I could just dodge Prism the first 2 rounds and she hits a bunch of aggro Starvos or some aggro decks, I just don't have to worry about her. Like I might just dodge her completely and I can high roll everybody and I have a plan for Starvo. The question is if anybody has that kind of a plan into an aggro field, because that's what it really comes down to, is not even just Phi, but if you have Phi and Viscerai specifically, and then there are plenty of people who, still believe that there's something with Briar, that she has, the ability to, maybe she doesn't always win the race against a Phi, but maybe she beats a Viscerai, and then she has a better chance of high rolling a Guardian than say the other aggro decks do. Because I think that's the big thing is, if you want to take an aggro deck, you have to ask yourself, can I beat the other aggro decks? Do I have the best version of an aggro deck? But also, do I beat the Guardians? Because people are going to be on some form of Guardian if they think the field is going to be aggressive. Traditionally, Bravo isn't control per se. He's much more in that disruptive mid-range style right now, where he's absolutely has a plan into certain decks to go, you know what? I'm not really going to worry about defending Phi out. I just know he can't defend me. So if I just crippling crush, pummel, and spinal crush him turn after turn, he can't do anything. So I'm just going to aggro him better because my aggro stops him. Like I'm just going to kick his teeth in. So it's such a weird field in what you're predicting, because a lot of it has to do with what you're predicting.
Dane, I mean, you can talk.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so my big issue is if you're going to exclude that backstory for Gore, I really don't want you to be including all of this bullshit of screaming goats and stuff. So no, I haven't heard anything that I disagree with. I really do think that a Bravo or a Viscerai has a really good shot. But it is, to Andrew's point, this is the most wide open we've seen it. And I think that it'd be silly to think that you can predict because we have zero data. Right? We don't have anything right now. It's going back to some previous episodes of ours in the last week or two. I think that this is going to be one of the most exciting to tune in for. Oh, wait. But I think it's going to be exciting to find the results from, because we have nothing yet. And I'm really chomping at the bit to see what comes out of this. I think it's going to be really, really interesting, whatever it does end up being. But I think that I think 25 to 30% of Phi might be high. I think it's probably going to be closer to a fifth of the field, sixth or fifth of the field. But I have no idea. I don't know.
If I had to guess, I don't think any one deck represents more than 15 to 18%.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm lying.
Number.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think anything gets to 20. I really don't. I think the field is too open.
More importantly than all that,
any one thing to hit 20.
Yeah, more importantly than all that, though, is I really want to see what the deck breakdown is for top 64.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be super cool to see what that looks like.
Right. And hopefully people will be posting like they have been, because it's nice to, like you said, top 8 doesn't tell us as much as the top 64.
Yeah, it's top 64.
Yeah, 64 is a good number to see.
I think most important thing to come away from this Pro Tour event is that at some point in the constructed events weekend, I don't care where it is, the love of God, someone just scooped a Prism. Just let her win something. Just let her go. Just, it's time. We're ready. Let's just let her go. Let's move on with our lives. We can move on from the Monarch busted heroes and Starvo, and we can just reset this thing.
So if I bring Prism to the next event, can we just get a local community? Everyone scoop to me. I'll just shoot all the way up. I'll be the nail in the coffin for everybody. I'll take that hit.
You treat the battle hard and give me my Pro Tour invite. Let me give run her away. No big deal.
I'm doing this for the people. This isn't for me. I don't want the Pro Tour. I don't want the PTI. I'm here to give the people what they want. The end of Prism.
I'm judging. I'm judging. So I already know I'm a big deal. If you don't that's a little bit of a deep cut back to.
If you ever show up with a yellow shirt, I will rip it off of your back and I will burn it in a garbage can.
Hold on.
We also hold on, because I got to plug this. We also didn't mention this at the beginning of our podcast, just like we didn't mention it at the beginning of Andrew's. Is that this is a crossover episode where we just got done recording, and Andrew had a really good talking point that we all got really into, and I think that I was right in the end. We can all agree. But like, I think that it was a really good conversation that you should check out over on Dice Commando, and we'll plug that at the end, and we'll put a link in the description and everything for you. But
some people would say that our conversation was
interesting. Yeah.
You know what's funny is we still had a comment, and I don't know if it was on Twitter or the YouTubes, but they still listen, is how abrasive, like when we get in fights, like it's kind of like when your dogs or like two kids are getting in a fight, the guys calm down. It's like, that's just, we enjoy
Jason.
that. I don't think they understand the enjoyment. I do get enjoyment getting in a good old verbal argument, because I can forget about it 30 seconds later and we can have this conversation. I don't care, but I like getting a nice heated. You know, we were in a meeting one time, and this happened at work about 10 years ago. And this is a true story, 100% true. I don't tell very many true stories. This is one of them. And I got in a nice little argument with my boss. Surprise, surprise. In a meeting with the whole branch, right? And my assistant manager goes, "Jason, you're so argumentative all the time. Why are you?" I'm like, Brenda, I'm not. And this is 10 years ago, and probably shouldn't say this kind of stuff at work. I'm like, I'm just a debater. I'd like to debate. Some, and this is across the whole branch, some would say I'm a master debater. And everyone loses it, except for Brenda.
She was HR.
Doesn't say a word. I'm like, Brenda, I'm a master debater. Oh, Jason! Like, had to say it twice, which kind of ruined the whole fact. At least the rest of the branch got it. So, just so everybody knows, I'm not argumentative. I'm a master debater. Okay, that's just what I am.
I thought at the beginning of that, or near the end, when you said that the guy called you argumentative, I thought you were gonna say, "No, I'm not. I'm argumentative." But then I remembered that you just can't pronounce shit in the first place. So like that was not where that joke was going. And I was like, "Oh, Dane, you're an idiot."
It wasn't a joke. It was a true story. That was not a joke. It was a true story. Story. So next.
True story. So yeah.
Actually, let me pop in, because your guys' interesting discussion last time, it gave me anxiety, but I actually enjoyed it very much. And you guys were both right, because
anxiety.
People find chess interesting, and I find it interesting to watch a chess match, but I do not want to sit and watch a chess tournament. So I think you guys were both right.
Yep, that's fair.
And that's fair. Match. Yeah, that's a good point. Good point. I like that.
I will watch a Starvo v Starvo as per your topic.
Unless you're bringing,
but I don't want to watch a tournament of Starvo v Starvo.
Unless there's 12 different setups being run in chess, I'm not interested at all in watching.
No, but I'll like sometimes YouTube, because you'll watch one, then you'll get the like here, watch this chess tournament. I'm like, God, I don't want. Fine, I will watch the chess tournament for you, YouTube.
And then Jason's like,
for at least another 2-3 weeks, because that's my limit for chess matches. So I agree, Andrew. Best and worst of Uprising. We're 6 weeks past release. My hot
only
take,
6 weeks. Only 6 weeks.
Yeah,
I think it's
that's about right. It's about right.
I think it's about right.
Wow.
It was like June 24th or June 27th, something like that.
Wow.
Jeez. So I think I've fallen into the listening to some players that I like and believe, and so I've formulated my opinion with theirs. So when this first came out, I thought this was the most amazing draft set ever. Loved it. Great draft set, great sealed. I have now come complete. So 180, not 360, because I'd be back where I started. 180, I think it's a horrible draft set. You can force fi too easily. You can draft horribly in this. You can misread it, and you can have 5 fis, and the kick-ass Dromai deck and Icelander deck can still lose to those 5 5s in an 8-person pod. So I've come full around on that.
Halfway
now
around.
It's a horrible draft. Not sure in your guys' opinion.
I'll start. What the heck?
Go for it.
I never liked it from the start. I thought it was way too fi heavy, and then I came around and I was actually starting to like it. And then as people started to learn it more, it's like as people went from JV to varsity, I think it got bad again, because it became to the point where if you drafted Icelander and you were the only person drafting Icelander, you just like won the tournament. And now I think a lot of people have realized that. And if 2 people draft Iyslander, she's not playable. That's kind of my take, because there's just not mathematically enough cards in most packs, right? So, and then Dromai, I guess, is kind of a wild card. And sure, you can force Fi, but Dromai is still grabbing the Blaze Headlongs and stuff. So
I love that card.
I mean, the card's phenomenal in that set, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not a huge fan.
It's going to make it interesting with Worlds having a lot of draft in it.
Yeah.
Even at a top level, that's going to be really, really weird.
It's gonna be really
Yeah.
interesting.
So
yeah.
It is going to be interesting.
It will be.
So it's weird because one of the things that I historically liked about Flesh and Blood in terms of its draftability was that in other games, and I've said this before, in other games you have bombs. So oftentimes the person who drafts the bomb is the person who can win. Whoever opens that card, that when they get 6 energy or 6 mana or whatever the game is and what the resource curve is, whoever gets that card will often win more games than they lose because you're going to play longer in draft and in sealed. What I've come around to in these last few sets in Fab is that they way back in the way back time machine when we played in WTR, I think that is the best draft in sealed set because they built a lot of balance into the set that we haven't had since. And as a result, it was a set that felt good to draft because all the heroes felt like they had some viability. And a lot of that, I think, had to do with the fact that, number one, as soon as Arcane comes into a draft set, the set sucks in draft and sealed. That's just my perspective because it creates a zero-sum game for some situations where you burn all your quell because you have to at some point for some big bomb to have a turn that you might turn the tide on. And then as a result, now you are in a position where you can't win. You are in a position where there's an inevitability about the game where it's like, well, if they just draw that card that does 4 arcane and then they can use the wand at me, I just die. Like I can't stop 8. And so you can be at 8 to 10 life and just lose the game, which feels bad. It's a lot like when Prism would just hammer you with these massive attacks and you're like, I drafted 1/6 power, I can't break all of the phantasms, and you're just getting spears of surreality into something off Iris or like a generic attack, and it's every turn is just 13 damage. It's like, I can't defend this, I can't do anything about it. Or even in Arcane, if somebody just had a nutty Kano pool and you didn't draft Null Rune, you had like 2 turns and you were just completely auto dead. It didn't matter that he had 15 life. But when you went back to Welcome to Wraith, I think what made the set so good was that it was all physical damage and there were tons of defense reactions. It felt like if you played Guardian, you got access to Staunch Response. Everybody had access to Sync Belows, and everything was more, there was a lot of push and pull and back and forth in the games. And I think that Arcane fundamentally breaks draft and sealed if you don't allow people to have Null Rune. I just think that if you can't just give everyone Null Rune, then fundamentally Arcane is too powerful in a closed sealed environment.
I really like what they did with like Helios Miter, but I don't think that it was enough. But so
Yeah,
this is the thing that I come back to with this set that makes me think. So I'm going to say my first point first. It's going to lead into my second, so just bear with me. My first point is that these issues that we're talking about, for this set, the fact that there's not a ton of 6 powers, right, to deal with the Phantasm, but there's also not like readily available Arcane Barrier. It's like those issues, right, are not stopping the issue that Jason brought up, where Fi is the deck that neither of those issues apply to, and he's still the trouble deck. So that's leading me into the fact that I agree Welcome to Wraith was a fantastic draft set, and tell me what you guys think, but I think it was fantastic because it was vanilla as shit. Like, it was like, there's not a lot of super interesting things happening. It's just math games on powers of cards and blocks and having defense reactions or not. Like it was extremely simple in the sense that there were not a lot of toggles. If you look at it from like almost like a game design perspective, they weren't flipping a lot of toggles. It was very simply like power defense and cards in hand, cards blocking with, cards attacking with. Like that was it. Like you didn't have to account for blocking arcane with 2 cards and resources and like what you had for equipment. And like there wasn't a lot of that. It was just, I'm attacking you, you're attacking me. How can we balance this? And it was extremely vanilla. And I feel like that almost can't exist now.
But I don't think it was as vanilla as what you're saying it is. I mean, you still had to have knowledge on how to play Dory and play around Reprise and pummel or losing your hand at the end or getting into Kodachi lock.
That's a fair point. Like it's not as vanilla as I made it out to be. But still,
what made it great is the weapons. The fact that you had usable weapons that are still played in decks today that came out in the very first set. Anathos, one of the best weapons. The Levia builds that have Romping Club, one of the better decks.
Kodachi.
Guardian, everything. Kodachis are still being played. People have dabbled in other things, but they always come back.
Everybody running Dawnblade. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, people
Dory's back, baby.
Did all that, but I'll be honest, I've never lost to an Axe deck. I mean, even
Dawnblade. Yep.
Dawnblade can get crazy.
Go play at tabletop tournaments. Tell me what you think.
Well, I've played some of the ones that come out there in bigger events and done just fine. So
that's a local cut.
Yeah,
that was kind of a rip on. He kind of ripped on a whole store and meta right there.
Just
all little meta.
No, he does that guy always wins tabletop tournaments with the Axis Dory. He's Axis, constantly. I'm seeing his picture all the time on Facebook. So he's doing something.
So
people don't know.
Now that we've defined what we perceive as the worst, what are the best things, or what's the best thing? If you had to pick one, what's the best thing about Uprising that we've been gifted? And I will let Andrew start.
That's a tough one, and I know I'm going to take flack for this one, but I do think the introduction of Icelander as a concept was the best thing. I don't know that the I'm really worried about where Icelander will go as she gets more cards and stuff in the future. But I think that the introduction of a control mechanic I should say a disruption control, right? Because we've had fatigue control, right? But the introduction of a true disruption control. Yeah. Okay, whatever. Counterspell.
No. I'm with you. I'm with you.
Right?
Yep. I'm with you.
Yeah. A counterspell-esque, as close as we can get to counterspells. And I know people are shouting rewind and all that. I get it. But you guys know what I mean, right?
Yep.
I think it's a good thing. I'm worried about Arcane in general, where it's going to go. But I'm worried about Icelander and more blues and stuff. But I think that's probably the best part to come out of the set, because I think it's really well done as it sits on the day that the set was published.
That's fair.
And I want to add, so what I think they did well, because I agree with that 100% with Icelander. And if Icelander gets out of control, it just brings Dromai in to control her. Because I have played a lot of Dromai into Icelander matchups, and I've won a lot of them on 30 plus health. Because with Thaw and what you can do, Icelander struggles into that matchup, which I think is good that you had a yin and a yang at the same time together to help control. And then you just throw in the aggro deck, which we already have answers to Fi already within building decks to do well into him. So I just like the fact that they did counter Icelander a little bit. Obviously, her power curve is going to go up with each ice card that is blue that is released. I would love to see an ice freaking arrow to make Lexi just a touch better.
Yeah.
And get her consistency up a little. I did play Lexi and did the worst in this new meta, because if you don't get that disruption early against Fi, he will overrun Lexi, just because you can't get back once if you have one off turn. So I'm excited that hopefully Dynasties will bring the continuation of what was built here. Ice arrow. Want an ice arrow, for the love of God.
Yeah.
Give an ice arrow.
That was actually the point that Andrew's point made me think of, was like, I agree that Icelander is like the first time we've seen like a super dedicated control type archetype being introduced. But I just harken back to when Blake and I were talking about Arya being released and how excited we were that Lexi appeared to be this really control centric, like with frostbites and being able to consistently give frostbites and some of her cards hindering, like being a disruptive control. We were really excited by that. And I think that with Icelander, I almost had this spark of realization that you know how, Blake, you were talking about Spectra and how it's just like it's a weird mechanic that is just sort of an inherent issue with the way that the game, like, it just eats the action point. Like, it doesn't result in any, it's basically like a net loss for the opponent regardless of what they do. I almost have that same feeling with Arcane. Like, I had took like this step back and looked at the game, and I was like, Arcane almost feels like it's this monster that's not gonna ever get smaller. You know, like, it's never going to be less of, like, you can balance different within the physical damage realm elements of physical damage to make them like ebb and flow, but it's like Arcane is only ever going to get to be more of an issue.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So
Well said.
I almost got
Well
like
said.
that. I almost got like that same feeling that, like, when you were talking about Spectra, it's like, well, shit, Arcane kind of is that on the larger scale. So I literally 30 seconds ago thought of that, thanks to Boulevard Brewing, Bourbon Barrel Quad. This could be Golden Road Brewing. Golden Road Brewing, please sponsor us.
I don't think Arcane's an issue in the CC format. I think it only is an issue.
I'm not talking about right now. I'm not talking about right now. Like,
yeah, I would just like to point out that
going forward,
I feel personally attacked by the inclination that Arcane.
Do you feel
Arcane,
attacked as the guy who just talks shit about Prism constantly? Do you feel attacked? I'm so sorry. Oh my god, are you okay?
So what's funny is I exist 100% in a world where I acknowledge the absurdity sometimes of what happens with Kano, because Arcane does have its situations, and a lot of times how you win a game feels very degenerate and negative for your opponent.
Right.
Last night, I'm going to tell the story here. I think Andrew will appreciate this. I think our listeners will appreciate this. I have to tell you the story of maybe my grandest misplay ever on Kano, where I punted it so bad and had zero right to win a game last night. But in classic fashion, Kano looked at me in the eyes and he said, "You know what? Never punished.
I got
Never
this.
punished.
I got this, B. Sit back. I'm going to flip the top deck, and we're going to crush this motherfucker."
So this is basically what happened. I'm playing one of my best friends in the world, Robert. Robert is playing Dash. He's playing it phenomenally. He's doing everything he should do. He's sequencing it correctly. He's having a great night at the skirmish. He is rolling it. He puts me in a position where he says, I take a shot where the next, I don't even remember what that card is, but it says if you get hit by this one, the next attack, it's dominate.
Yeah.
So I was like, whatever, I'm not worried about it. I'm at 8 life. Like, can you really go high enough? Like, you're going to get to 11? That's crazy. You got Goliath Gauntlet, but come on. Then he plays Rotary Ram for like +3, and then he goes Goliath Gauntlet, and he's like, here's 11, boy. Do something. And I was like, this is a bad situation, but I'm prepared. I play Kano. This is Blitz. I kill you from nothing. You got 2 resources floating. I will do perfect math. I break my boots. I play Aether Wildfire from my arsenal, which, oh my God, that's not an Aether Wildfire in my arsenal. I put a Tome of Aetherwind in there. I'm an idiot. But at that point, I didn't want to take backseat in the last round of Swiss, knowing that like Top Cut was potentially on the line. I was like, I can't take this back. I would never take this back in an organized tournament. I was like, I have to accept what I have just done in butchering the play. I broke my Storm Striders with lethal on the table to play a tome to draw 2 cards. I am a moron. Then I proceeded to go tome into tome into tome and play all 4 tomes and end up with 7 cards in my hand, and then went Sonic Boom into Lesson in Lava to fish a Blazing, to top deck a Blazing into a Blazing to kill him with almost as many cards between my hand and my pitch zone as were left in my deck. It was degenerate, absolutely disgusting, and I had zero right to win the game. So I fully acknowledge that Arcane exists in a world where it always toes the line, which is why usually when I make a plea to LSS to please give me a good card, give me something for Kano that counterbalances our negative, I caveat that by saying I don't actually want something that breaks Kano because I like Kano and I don't want him to get banned. I just want to keep playing him. Let me be a fringe case where I can do something degenerate, and on occasion at a random armory I play a friend and I'm on 2 life and he threatens lethal and he's on 34 and I do 36 damage out of nowhere with like Aether Wildfire, Blazing Aether. I think that at 100% is a concern. Long term is like what happens with, you know, Arcane. So, which is why I think they just now gave us our second wizard. But I think the best thing that this set gave us is just diversity. I think because I think Icelander's good, but I don't think she's bonkers.
Right. No, I agree with that.
Yet.
I want to go.
New.
Yeah, I want to go back to when Andrew was agreeing with me though, because that was really nice. So I want when Andrew was like, you said that really nicely. I just want to like kind of, you know, build off that a little bit. So what were your thoughts? What have your thoughts been on Wizard?
Sorry, I got just what did I compliment you on? I'm spaced on it right now.
Damn it. No, when I was talking about how like Wizard, I think Wizards only going like there's like
they're only going to get better, right? Because if you look at how this is like game theory, I get it, but like if you look at how the game will creep and evolve over time, like they have some pretty set bounds that like if they break is like very clear creep, right? Like going to 4 pitch, going to 4 defense, like those are very clear like rules that they probably won't break. And the room that they've been expanding on, and we've seen it already on some of the Icelander cards, is like on hit effects with, right? On hit effects are the future of the game. And like, what is it? It's Aether Ice Vein, right? That's the 5/4/3, right? With on hit, discard or freeze or something like that, right?
Discard or
play too. Yeah, it's discard, which actually I love, by the way, because when I'm playing Guardian into Icelander, I want to discard my Sink Belows. So I freaking love that. That said, that's the space that I'm worried about is, well, 5 Arcane, you know, we don't want to go above 5 Arcane because you can only have AB5. So let's just make the on hit effects. And then, you know, I mean, like you were talking about with Kano, Blake, you know, the Wildfire's pretty stupid, right? Like,
it's the dumbest card in Fab.
Yeah. So, I mean, and then where do you go from there, right? So it's kind of that thing where, like, if you look at the upward creep potential, I think the upward creep potential of Arcane, because you are limited at that, and sure, I guess they could do AB10. I guess you could go there, I suppose. Yeah. But if you really look at like the balance that they, and this is a lot of a compliment to, I know I'm going off here, but this is a huge compliment to LSS at how good of a job they've done managing what they have to date. I do think it's worth saying that they've done a good job. But if you look at the upward potential, Arcane is the system that will be harder for them to control than, well, Blake can block for 12. Again, it's just my opinion, man. But I think that's if there's a risk valve, I don't know what a risk valve is, but if there's a risk, a risk, right? Yeah. If there's a place to pay more attention to, it's keeping Arcane under control.
Jason's like, I do irrigation. I know what valves are. I'm with you.
Yeah. They have done a good job to this point. I always point out to people though with Kano and the Wizards that we do, for every Wildfire we get a Sigil of Parapets and a Rewind that are completely useless cards that I have to get foil Majestics up to just stick in my binder to never play. Maybe one day they have a place, but they have very much existed in a realm of being horrified at what they seem like. They sit in a room and every time they print a Wizard card, before they print it, they are sweating. Like they are very much just, it's like they're sitting in a back room and they're just pouring sweat like airplane. It's just running off their heads. They're like, this is it, right? This card, this one's good. This is good. It's not going to do anything negative.
That's so funny. I firmly believe that they are sitting on a release of just generic null rune stuff, but it's just Arcane Barrier 2. And they're just like, all right, when we accidentally push this bitch too far, we're going to just have like our supplemental set have Mega Null Rune, and it's just going to be Arcane Barrier.
Why do you need to sit on that? Like you?
No, I know.
We just designed it sitting here.
But
Super
I
Null
mean,
Rune,
like,
AB2, suck
right?
it,
But it's like,
I mean,
but it's like they don't need to release it right now because there's nothing
Right.
inherently broken with Wizard that is going to cause bad play experiences. But it's like, if we really look at the way that LSS, and this is not to caveat on Andrew's point, like LSS has done a fantastic job, but go backing even more further, you realize like all of the toggles they built into this game, like it's so easy for them, not easy. It is such a possibility for them to rebalance where necessary. It's like Arcane Barrier 2, Null Rune, done. Now everyone has access to a very simple Arcane Barrier 3 without really hindering their equipment suite. They can go up to Arcane Barrier 6 super easily with just like 2 Arcane Barrier 2 pieces. You know what I mean? Like it's just it becomes a lot simpler for them to balance a game with so many toggles that they've inherently built into the mechanics, which is really nice to know that.
I will say, just real quick, this is something, just a free piece of information for everybody who listens to this. Okay. Tab 101. Arcane Barrier 2 on a piece of equipment is not inherently better than Arcane Barrier 1. Also, just because you can run 6 Arcane Barrier does not mean it's a good idea. It is a bad idea.
Right.
If your deck cannot support it. I think the struggle is you can give people as much Arcane I don't care. You give people Arcane Barrier 3 on all of their equipment. I don't care.
Yeah, you're waiting until cards in hand are down to 1 card in hand, and it's like, cool, you're blocking for 3 max. Yeah.
Yeah. I played a game last night. Somebody played Arcane Barrier 5, and I thought to myself, that's fine. Guess who turbos through their cycle faster than anyone in Flesh and Blood? Kano. 5 turns. It took me 5 turns to get through my cycle. I pitch stacked Wildfire, Sonic Boom, and then before that was 4 blues with my eye, and I had a Blazing Aether in my arsenal. And I had 2 energy pots and a Deja Vu up, because you know what? You know what you're not doing if you're pitching to 4 or 5 Arcane Barrier every turn? Attacking me. And if you can't kill me, you give me more time to play the game. You know who you don't want to play the game against? A pitch stack Kano. It's a horrible decision. Don't do it.
Right now, this is the moment where I sell my pitch to Jason on getting the soundboard, because right now I think would be the perfect time to just for Jason to hit the button that goes brrrr, because Blake is getting so hard talking about Kano right now. Like getting to explain his pitch stack and getting to talk about like how he's setting this up. It's like he's just like that's perfect
because
soundboard.
Everybody always does it. Everybody goes, "Oh, let's just make Arcane Barrier 2 on everything." That solves nothing. Okay, you need to make ways
to run into Kano.
Arcane Barrier 3 is the best. You know what the best design they did to counter Kano has nothing to do with equipment. It's called Oasis Respite. Put it in your deck if you're worried about Kano. Don't put Arcane Barrier 5 on the table. Put 3 Oasis Respites in your CC deck. Put one in your arsenal. When they play Wildfire, you play Oasis Respite.
Some people call it Respite. Yeah,
but in the comments. For sure. It doesn't matter.
Respite too.
Just Respite.
Sometimes they call it Respite.
I've done that. I've done that for 2 or 3 episodes, and no one's picked up on that is a Ted Lasso quote where there'll be like GIF, like someone says GIF, and then someone in the scene says, some people pronounce it GIF, and then someone will say GIF, and then someone will be like, some people call it GIF.
Well, I say GIF and believe it's the correct way to say it. The guy who made it does say that the pronunciation for the word is GIF. So I'm just saying. All right. So I think the last talking point we want to hit before we let Andrew go, because he does live on the West Coast. So,
so it's way earlier for him.
Right.
I'm
trying to let him get to his family so we don't take his whole night. But we just tonight, luckily, I like when articles come out right before we record, because it makes our recording so much better. Nothing feels worse than like when we get an article pops up at like 11 or 12 o'clock on a Thursday and we just missed it. So now we have to wait a whole week to talk about it, or it's just old news. Jason mentioned it, but we got the World Championship format, which I think in some ways is correct. Draft and constructed, I think it's great. Draft and Blitz.
No. Don't talk about it.
No, we could talk about it.
I got
we
you.
could talk about the format. I'm not talking about what we like or don't like. What I'm saying is, I'm more interested in thoughts on like what you guys think in terms of, is Blitz appropriate to add to the World Championship format, because it is a format in the game that they heavily support with skirmishes and things like that. Also, its location. What do we view its location? Because I think if you look at the way that it's set up, somebody could have an immaculate 11 rounds. They could go 10-1, 11-0, 9-2. They could feel hot to trot, ready to go, rolling up to that Blitz, and then they got 5 rounds of the most chaotic, degenerate combo wombo format in Flesh and Blood that they have to play. Like, how do you feel going into that?
So how about this? Because we want to know in your comments what you think without knowing what we think, and we'll hit on this next week. But what if you're in that situation? How about we talk about what decks? And I'm okay if this isn't what you guys want to talk about, but what if we talk about like what deck do you bring to that situation?
I'm also curious if you think there's an alternate version, because I actually, in another group chat, our buddy Robert just talked about him. Robert actually brought up an interesting counter proposal where he said, what if, in order to play your Blitz deck, whatever it is, it's the same, you have to register 80 cards for your deck. You have to use those 80 cards to play your constructed and your Blitz deck.
What if I admitted that that's mostly how I play my Blitz decks, is I just break my CC decks apart? Does that count?
one copy out. Yeah. That's
what you should. I mean, you play it properly then, Andrew. You play Blitz properly.
Yep.
That's the proper way to play Blitz. You bring your CC deck, strip some cards out. Let's run with it, baby. Let's see what happens.
I'm joking, and my 1-3 performance last weekend skirmish would but go ahead.
I am 6 in 2 skirmishes with Cheyenne, so I'm trying to get above 500 with her.
Yeah, I am so tempted to talk about how I feel about this right now.
We'll wait till next week. But I got a better idea.
Wait, what about my opinion? I'm
okay. Yeah, Andrew, we want to know your opinion. He's not going to be here next week. He's not. No, let's use this.
This can't wait.
Hold on.
I will forget.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to old man forget.
Okay.
Give me a number between 1 or 2.
1.5.
What happened?
1 or 2. Say 1 or 2.
1.
2. You said between.
Here we go. I'm spinning for the Twitter giveaway, and then I'm going to count down and see what number wins, because I forgot last week, and then Blake reminded me. Didn't matter. So let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Jesus Christ. So Jason.
Bobby Lee is my winner.
Hey, Bobby.
Sometimes he do.
I am going to message Bobby Lee. Congratulations. Bobby Lee, 353-0235 or 53. I hope that's not your social security number. I highly advise putting your social security number on your Twitter handle. So that's not yours, Bobby.
Yeah. So now that we've got that out of the way, we can go back to what we talked. This is the chaotic nature of what I can't decide if people like this or hate this. That's another thing. You
organize it. We're gonna organize. Andrew,
do you like the chaos energy of what we're doing, or do you hate it? Comment below.
No, Andrew, going back to where we were, Andrew is not going to be here next week, and it will feed comments. So, Andrew, what is your take on the formats that are presented for
I mean, I think it's pretty tactical that they put it last where the rounds have the least impact. Like, I think that's very clear why they did it that way. I think that's signaling where they value Blitz. Maybe not like as a maybe not as a company, but like in terms of impact to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's fair. That's a really good point. Shit, we should have.
I mean, because if they did it first, you could have really good players going 0-3 just because they got blitzed, right? So it's the last. It carries the least weight. Most of those, you're going to know most of your top cut people probably by, because if you look here, you're going to know most of your top cut people before you go into Blitz, honestly, right? Just mathematically, right?
Someone would have to go, I think, full on Ofer in that format. If you're a top 4 person, you're going to have a hard time losing your way out of it if you can just split it. If you can go 3 and 2, you probably still. Now, granted, like the people in what is it, like probably like the 5 to 12-ish range, like that's a lot more influx. But that's where I guess it comes down to like what do they play and what's their approach, because that's going to be another that it does add a layer, which is interesting that people have to come in. There are people who aren't going to be very practiced in the format, and I think that adds a level of, do you think everyone's just going to play the most go burr deck and try to high roll people? And if you think that that's what people are going to play, you play the deck that you think stops that.
Well, I mean, the most go burr deck in Blitz is KO, and I don't think you're going to see a lot of that, right?
Well, yeah, I guess I mean more like a fire, a dash. Like those are the two decks that
It's a good point.
100% just they can 20 you on the spot if they get the right opening hand, can arsenal a max velocity and set themselves up. It's possible that they just 20 you like instantly on turn 2, and like Fi has that opportunity if he just double Art of Wars at first turn and he has a mask and all of his stuff. It's possible that those decks can just 20 you. So then if you're somebody playing into that, do you think that you have a way to counter it? Because or do you just hope that you high roll better?
I do wonder if they've tactically thought about their, like, I'm assuming they're going to stream. Like, I think that's a fair assumption. And I wonder if they've tactically thought about that. Like, if they put a Fi on, because you're right, like a Fi or a dash could be done in like 3 minutes. And then you've got cranky grandpa somewhere across the room. And like, hey, guess what? We have 35 minutes of dead air until the next round.
Yeah.
So, but then again, do you want to put cranky grandpa on there all day long? But I mean, either way, they're showcasing something that they support. It's a smart move from the company. I understand why people would not be happy with that. End of position.
Yep. I think it's going to be, never mind. Thanks, Andrew, for your input and your perspective. That's that you raised good points. I think that like the positioning of it in the competition is good, but we are not going to get into it. Because next week is when we're going to get.
I will say I did think that an interesting comment right off the cuff on Twitter was Zach Bunn saying he definitely has to fully consider using a PTI on the event if he doesn't earn an event otherwise by some other means. Earning a PTI, because if you're on the edge of the top, the top cut or day 2, if you're on the brink, and then you get just shellacked by something, it does create some interesting dynamics in terms of people who don't have an invite via the other other means, which that was the other thing that I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are. Is this our officially the first time that they're going to use ELO as a means to qualify people?
I believe that's accurate. Right?
So, because it says that they're going to give top 50s to the global leaderboards for lifetime XP, 90-day XP, constructed ELO, and limited ELO. I'm curious. I would need to look at like the lifetime XP. I'm hoping that that's starting to balance a little more. I think that's the one, maybe more so than 90-day, that I do struggle with a little bit, having lifetime XP being a qualifier, just because that's a weird thing that without resetting it at some point, there are people who legitimately had a year head start on XP.
Do you remember at the very beginning when we were trying to set up like our local?
Right now, it's pretty diverse.
Like our local XP gains.
Okay. Oh, it's very diverse. Yeah, it's all over the place.
When we started, do you remember trying to like set up like the XP grind, and then like not being able to figure it out, and then all of a sudden we started playing and looking at like people qualifying with lifetime XP and seeing that it's like, oh yeah, we missed out on like a year and a half or a year of like our all the times we played, we could have been counting up XP. It's like that just seems kind of sticky.
I think a lot of it will depend on how many people end up in the top 50 that have like 4-digit numbers, right? Because those people clearly had granted
2,000 is the most in the top 50.
Right. No. I'm not saying that. I'm saying their player numbers, because we would have never gotten a 4-digit. We would have never gotten a 4-digit number because we were around early enough.
No, there's not.
I get
super diverse.
It's just like stuff like that is. I get that a lot of those people still play a lot, but I also look at something like that where it's like if you had even still, right? They have until October 1st, so there are going to be some people in like the next maybe the next 20 or next 30 that could get themselves up in that range that maybe are those people that got that advantage. Maybe not the top 50, but people maybe in the 51 to 75 who have just been like, well, yeah, I had like 400 XP.
Nope.
Oh.
Not non-factor.
Right.
I'm looking at it right now. It's a zero
good.
factor.
Good to know.
I mean, yeah.
All right. Well, we are at about an hour. Anything we didn't cover?
I mean, let Andrew.
Looking at you, show
and
notes
subscribe.
guy. Show notes guy, Blake. Anything we didn't cover?
No. We're good. The only thing not in the show notes is we want to make sure Andrew has a proper time to plug.
We make sure that, Andrew, just for you, we're going to put it at the very end when the most people are watching.
Right.
So
That's right.
Yeah.
Because I know that everybody watches past 8 minutes. No,
it's why I tried to plug you at the beginning. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No. So thanks guys for having me on. Again, go check out our cast that we did with these dudes over on my channel. It actually go up probably after this video because time is funny how that works. But yeah, you can come check us out at it's youtube.com/Dice Commando. I don't think you have to www these days because the internet's is smart enough. But go find us on YouTube, Dice Commando. We do all sorts of stuff over there. I do gameplay commentary if you want to listen to me chit chat with myself most of the time, but sometimes we have fun guests on. We did actually get some really cool interviews last week. We had some pretty high ranking folks on there, so you can go check out their Fi Deck Techs. And yeah, anyway, thanks guys for having me on. It was great to kind of kumbaya with you guys once again. It's been a spell, so thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's been a minute. It was really fun doing yours. Like, I'll be honest, like, not to be salty about it, but I think that your video was better than our video. But that's okay. We'll accept that. Like, we're fine with that. Hope you guys enjoyed ours. Regardless, be sure to check out Dice Commando, YouTube / whatever it is, Dice Commando, and show some love over there if you haven't already. I'm assuming that a decent number of our followers are already aware of Andrew and what he does over there. So be sure to check that out. Be sure to like and subscribe and leave your comment on what you think about the formats being presented. And we will talk to y'all next week. Peace.